Cash Flow Diary Podcast, episode 494.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cash Flow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cash Flow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cash Flow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because here's the thing. When it comes down to it, we have choices. I mean, you and I, we make choices every day. You know, what am I going to eat? What am I going to wear? And at the end of the day, sometimes these choices can be overwhelming. Well, a very important choice is where you're going to invest your time, where you're going to invest your money, and most importantly, if you ever plan to experience that thing called retirement or maybe that lifestyle where you're just not working as hard as you used to, you got to make some really, really important choices about how to gain the most. How can I deal with inflation and taxes and deal with all of the stuff that's in front of me? Well, you know, like I know, that many of us are going to choose to use real estate in some way and for many different reasons. But then we are now presented with a whole new set of challenges, and chief among them is, where's the deal? How do I run it? Who's going to finance it? Oh my God, I have a job. I need time. That all of these things that can feel overwhelming to learn. And at the end of the day, we still have the goal in front of us. The goal does not somehow change just because it gets difficult for us. We have to change with it. And here's the thing. It doesn't matter when you start. It does matter that you start. And I think today's guest is going to be able to help you and I understand all of those things, plus give us access to a market, I will say, that for me, historically, it was challenging for me to do, but they've been able to absolutely master it. And that's exactly what I get excited about. I am, of course, talking about one of the high return real estate guys known as Jeff Schechter. You probably know him as Shecky. And I'm kind of excited because he's an entrepreneur. He's been an entrepreneur from forever ago. And more importantly than all of that, when it comes down to it, is that he's not only learned to change and become so many different things at the end of the day. What it comes down to is he's found a way to not only carve his own path, but leave a way for you and I to build our portfolios in a very succinct and efficient manner as well. I think we're going to learn a lot because when it comes down to it, it is no small feat to go out there and build a turnkey rental business. So let's listen, let's learn, let's get ready to love Shecky. Shecky, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jay. I really appreciate that intro. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm glad to hear that. This is going to be exciting. Now, this being the first time that you're here, I do have to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody else. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You know, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, Hulk, etc. And I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. Chief among them is that as an entrepreneur, occasionally I can envision myself running around town using our products and services and saving our customers. And maybe I am wearing a cape and tights. Also, though, as an entrepreneur, just like a superhero, there's a beginning. You know, that first time. Think about Spider-Man, for example. There was a time where he was just, a kid going to school, doing his thing, taking some photos, and then one day he gets bit by a spider, discovers, oh my God, I have something special, and he gets to choose whether to use it for good or for evil. So my question to you is as follows. Before, the high return real estate guys, before your time, even consulting before, let's say even before your time in college, before everything, before you had the real estate bug, what we want to know is, who is Shecky?
Well, it's a tough one. I remember when I was growing up and people asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And my standard answer was always rich. And I didn't really even know what that meant. I grew up in a really, really conservative environment. So, my father was a clergyman, and, he was actually a rabbi, so I was raised Jewish. And there was a lot of, expectations, and, you got to follow this certain path. And I just realized, very early on, like this was even in high school, I remember even in junior high, that I was like, man, this is just not this sort of defined path. This is not going to work for me. And I did not do very well in school. I went to college for like 4 or 5 years, ended up dropping out. And but I just knew that there was something more. I didn't necessarily know what it was, but I knew that it wasn't completely mainstream. I knew that it wasn't like, do this, follow this path, get the good education, get the job, do all this other kind of stuff. And as a result, I just became very, very scrappy. And so I pretty much completely disappointed my parents and a lot of other relatives, and just kind of carved my own path, and I've been involved in a lot of different businesses. So it's, I think that's really, to me, I guess I am a diplomatic rebel. That's who Shecky is.
Okay, that's an interesting way of naming it. Now, I'm just curious. Are you familiar with the song by Calloway?
Which one?
I Want to Be Rich.
Maybe.
I just thought it was pretty funny when you said, I'm like, the answer to your, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be rich. I'm like, wow, there's a song. He's got to know it, but it's okay. It's okay. It's from 1989. Most of the people listening right now have no clue either. It's all good. It's all good. Now,
well, that certainly fits into my era for sure.
Understood. Now, there's one of the things that you said, though, that struck me. Not only, I mean, I too did the whole college dropout thing. Totally get you there. But you said defined path. And for me, I was in a military environment, which maybe there is a similarity growing up in the clergy environment versus military environment. There's probably lots of things that are similar there. But I did not like that idea of the defined path either. I'm curious what you found. Like, why does the idea of a defined path turn you off so much?
Well, because I think that it's not you. Anytime you have somebody else telling you this is your path, I mean, you're going to marry this kind of a person, you're going to have this kind of a career, this is kind of what your expectation is. There's a lot of, obviously societal pressure, and there's certainly plenty of congruencies with military upbringing versus a clergy upbringing, in that, they expect you to act, behave, do, move, progress in a certain way. And it does not give you really any opportunity for finding out who you really are and doing any kind of self-actualization. And I think there's millions of people out there that do that and don't question it, and it's fine. And they can, for the most part, probably lead normal lives or lives of maybe quiet desperation, who knows. But to me, I just couldn't live with that. Like, I needed to do my own thing. I didn't necessarily even know what that was, but I knew what it wasn't. And that's where it all started. That's where my entrepreneurial journey started. I knew I wasn't going to be a doctor, dentist, lawyer, or CPA. Like, those were my 4 choices that were laid out for me.
You're like, if that's all I've got to choose from, I'm choosing E, none of the above. So with that being the case, though, what was that time like? I mean, because I'm going to take a stab and say that there is a number of listeners who are probably feeling that same in between, I really don't know kind of space, like where I belong, because that's what you're describing. Is like, I don't know quite where I fit in. I just know where I don't. How did you figure that out?
Well, how do you know I have it figured out?
Good question. Good question. Okay.
You know, I think, look, there's a danger out there. I mean, I'm very involved in personal development, and there's all this talk out there about finding your passion and go with what your soul tells you, and certainly there's some truth to all that kind of stuff. But the reality is you just got to get out there and try stuff. And I mean, as an entrepreneur, I mean, I've had plenty of failures. And I've had plenty of failures in a lot of other arenas besides, professional. I mean, I've had, failures in personal relationships as well. I've had health failures, as I know you have too. And so eventually you just get to a point where you just got to try stuff and figure it out and figure what works. And I think what's interesting is as you get into things that you get better at and you continue to hone your craft, it becomes much easier to be passionate about things that you are good at. I think people get stuff kind of, back ass words, and they say, well, I got to figure out what my passions are and then go for it. I think, no, you got to go out there and try stuff and get good at some things and hone your craft. And then from there, it's easy to find the passion.
Okay. So now we got to have a very serious conversation for a second, because there's a number of people I know who are, they just, based upon what you just said, they just mentally quit on themselves, because the idea of trying things also carries with it the possibility of that thing not working out, and therefore having to experience what we know as failure. And there's a lot of people who don't want to go through that process. So I must ask you, where did your courage to do that come from?
Well, I didn't really have a safety net, number one. And I guess I should also say I've never been married, so I was never supporting a wife and children. And that certainly, there's no question, that gives me a little bit more flexibility financially. But I think...
Hold on. Are you saying that not being married makes you more brave to go try stuff? I don't understand.
Well, I'm just saying that you don't have as many other financial responsibilities. Like if you've got a wife and children, you're answering to other people. I mean, for the most part, I had a dog and a cat, and it didn't take much to keep them in kibble. So, and in my case, like there were years that I was house hacking, and I didn't even have a working bathroom in the house, and I would pee into a hole in the floor. Like that's never going to work if you got a wife and kids. So there were certain risks that I, financially at least, that I could take because I didn't have those responsibilities. Now that said, for those listeners that you're describing, if you're married and have kids, I don't want to let you off the hook. And what I mean by that is the key is really all in perspective. The way that you framed your question to me, Jay, is that nobody wants to go through failure. Nobody wants to go through quote unquote heartache. And you're framing that as something extremely negative. I can tell you that the reason that I have been successful in the business that I'm in, and the reason that I've had successes in some of my other businesses, is because of the magnitude and the sheer volume of failures that I had in addition to those successes.
Agreed, 100%. Yet it still takes a certain amount of courage to be willing to go down, to open yourself to the possibility of having that experience. And there's a number of individuals that may not be open to that possibility right now. What are they to do?
They are to go and lead their lives of quiet desperation and stick with the job and do the stupid Grand Prix every day, chasing the traffic, and come home, kick the cat, and never have any kind of real retirement, and work 50 weeks a year and live for that 2 weeks. I mean, what else is there? So, in like either that or unemployment or welfare or whatever. But, look, we're in a day now with the internet. Honestly, there's no excuses. I mean, there's so many cool little side hustles and things that you can do because the internet basically brings the whole world to your doorstep. So whatever it is that you want to do is very, very doable. You just got to learn it. You just got to, if you really want to do it, you'll go get some skills. There's so much less risk now than in the days, when I was coming up the ranks as an entrepreneur. I mean, back then you had to go all in and, storefronts and huge investments and all this other kind of stuff. Nowadays, there's just so much leverage available. And I think that it's much easier now to be an entrepreneur than ever before. So I don't want to give people an easy out on this question.
Oh, I don't want you to either. And in fact, I agree with you in terms of it being easier, but I want to hear some of those things take us on this journey. What did it used to be like before we get into, the turnkey business that you're currently running? What I want to know is, what was it like before all of that?
Well, let's go, BI, before internet, and
Yes.
because it's almost like BC in terms of business stuff. You just had to shell out a lot of cash. You had to do a lot of, there wasn't anything like, networking or Facebook groups or anything like that. Like, you wanted to get to people, you had to do flyers and handshakes and, go to, networking, coffee, breakfasts and meetings and all that other kind of stuff. And, you wanted to start a company, like you needed an office, you needed employees, you needed equipment, you needed a phone system. Like it just was a lot more of a cash and time outlay then than it is now. Right now, if you want, for example, just an example, if you wanted to peddle something, say on Amazon.com, you could go do that. You could actually find somebody that can handle the wholesale end of it online and bring in the product from China and turn around and flip it and sell it through Amazon's warehousing system. You don't even have to carry inventory. Right? Now, I'm not suggesting that somebody goes and does that, but I'm just telling you from a standpoint of perspective, like, it is so freaking easy now. So it's like if you're unwilling to do that, yeah, I know I'm not going to have a lot of mercy for you. Sorry, I'm not trying to sound like a hard ass. I just like it's go do it.
I am 100% in agreement with you. I maintain the thought process that the barrier to entry is non-existent at this moment. But more importantly, the barrier to entry is actually willingness now, not necessarily. It has nothing to do with finances. In fact, if you have the capacity to hear our voice right now, you're listening on a device that has the capability of literally giving you access to everything you need to build a business. And I'm 100% in agreement. But I'm also curious, what were some of the business models that you've tried in the past before, we'll say BI, and now as we get up to, what you guys are up to today?
BI was, there was 2 or 3 different forays into network marketing, MLM. That was my early days of deciding I was going to get rich. And,
Got it.
You jump up and down on the tables in Starbucks and tell people how great your opportunity is. And, I did okay in some of those, but it just was, really difficult to maintain the real promise of true passive income. There's still a lot of attrition in that business. And ultimately, as I started studying more marketing and getting better at marketing, I just decided if I'm going to peddle stuff, I'd rather peddle my own things rather than, a third party's product, as great as it might be. But I also, a long time ago, was somewhat in the flipping business, BI. I mean, I would house hack, and I would buy a house and I would live in it and fix it up. And my parents could never understand why there was never a kitchen in my house. Like, how do do you live without a kitchen? It's like, I don't know. I got this like board here, which is my counter, and there's a toaster oven over there. What else do I really need? So, I would just figure it out, like I was just scrappy. And, but my flipping business that eventually evolved into a flipping business. And then the internet kind of came around, and then that big crash came around in '08 and '09. And I basically got my ass handed to me on a silver platter. And I was doing things in a much more stupid way than I do them now. But it was, again, an extremely valuable lesson that I will never do again. So, again, a lot of the stupid stuff that I tried. I mean, I even out of college didn't even know what I wanted to do. I was driving a taxi cab. And my entrepreneurial bent was like, there's only a limited number of these, what they would call medallions, right? Which is basically the license for driving a taxi cab. So I made a deal with a guy that owned like 5 medallions. And I said, look, I'll lease them all from you 24/7. And as long as you make me a volume deal. And then I turn around and sublease those cabs to other drivers. So that way I could pick the best shifts. And then I could make a little markup on what they did. And essentially just doing that, I doubled my income of what I could do just driving myself. And again, there wasn't any big deal to it. It was just driving a taxi cab and hauling people around town. But there's always ways, if you're thinking like an entrepreneur, to hack the system. And that's just what an entrepreneur does. Yeah.
I did. I love that. So now, and I'm just thinking about that, how while the internet, yes, has brought all of us so much more possibilities, opportunities, etc., and expanded our horizons, yet some of the fundamentals are still the same, regardless of what you guys, whatever we're doing. When it comes down to building cash flow, the what's tried and true is still tried and true. We just might use a different tool in order to make that same thing happen. And by the way, when you were mentioning that the whole thing about the going onto Amazon, I don't know if you caught the part about you wouldn't even have to get on an airplane to go to China to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you do that from your jammies in your living room,
right? All you need is a cell phone. It's just insane what's really possible. So with all of this random, we'll say, experience, why real estate, man? Hey guys, thanks for listening as always, and I'm glad that you continue to support with each and every download and subscription and share. One of the things that I want to ask you, though, is where are you listening to me from right now? I know some of you, maybe you're on a treadmill, maybe you're washing dishes, maybe you're walking that dog, and some of you are actually in a vehicle driving right now. One of the fun things that you can do, get some of your time back, is begin to living a car-free existence. But even then, it can be a little complicated. So one of the things that I want you to do is I want you to go over to Zipcar. Go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary. It's a way that I am able to still go get a car just for a few hours, very, very simply, so that if I have a lot of errands to run and sheets to drop off and running to the short-term rentals, or if I just want to go for a long trip up to LA and back, etc., I can rent a car for a very, very short period of time. And the cool part is I don't even have to pay for any gas. Again, go to joinzipcar.com/cashflow diary.
Well, first of all, it's something that I've always been intrigued with. And, I mentioned network marketing and MLM. And if you look at statistics, the two arenas in the world which builds the greatest amount of wealth and millionaires is network marketing and real estate investing.
Yes.
But statistically, we've known that to be true for a long time. The internet, by the way, didn't change that. In fact, it may have even made it more true, just because, again, it just gave us more tools. So I don't know, I've always just had a love for it. Back in the days when I was flipping, I was that guy who I really enjoyed the process of going into a property and saying, how can I make it better? How can I make this blah property like a really cool property? Well, how could the floor plan be changed slightly? How could we rearrange the kitchen? So it was just sort of stuff that I just had an eye for that sort of design. And then, obviously when you start gaining bigger understanding of leverage and some of the other principles and appreciation and cash flow and all that, you start going like, boy, there's lots of different angles to real estate. There's hundreds of them. And it's just kind of one of those things that for me, as a lifelong learner, I get jazzed about it because even though I've been in the industry for a while now and off and on a couple times, I'm always learning new stuff. There's always like new ways to slice things. And it's just very exciting and intriguing to me. And there's just always an opportunity to improve.
Agreed. And, often well, let me say it this way. If we take a fish and judge it by its ability to climb a tree, it's not going to do so well. And would it be fair to say that in the real estate world, your genius has come alive and this is, you finally feel like you belong somewhere?
Yes, absolutely. I think that your quote, is that an Einstein quote? Because I know that from somewhere.
It's definitely not mine. I don't know.
No, I think it may even be Einstein, but it's an interesting point that, yes, we have to look at where our specialty is. And, even within the stuff that I do in my own company, there are certain things that I'm good at and certain things that I'm not. And I've just learned as we grow that I want to farm out the stuff that I'm not good at. I want to stay in my lane. And I think it's important for people to do that. But yes, I have between myself and my business partner and what we have created, we are absolutely in a groove right now that is fun, rewarding, profitable, amazing. And probably the best part about it is it's obviously there's a huge benefit to our customers and our investors. So that's the part that's very, very exciting because they're participating in the same stuff that we're participating in. Agreed.
So tell us a little bit about, high return real estate. How did you guys get started? And I mean, because there's, as you said, there's so many ways to skin the real estate cat. Why do turnkey real estate for people?
I often ask myself that same question. When you talk about some of the stuff that we talked about earlier with the failures and the stick-to-itiveness and whatever, my business partner Jack and I often laugh and go, "Gosh, if we knew the BS that we would have had to go through to get to this point, we would have never done this business." Never. So I just want to put that out there because people think that this ride is so freaking easy, and it's not. Originally, what happened was, as you know, I have a background in marketing, and my business partner is involved in another business. He's got a very large nutritional distributorship, and he was one of my clients. And so I was coaching him, consulting with him on how to grow his other business. And I was, just as happy as a clam living in Austin, Texas. He lives up in Michigan. And one day he reaches out to me and he's like, "Shecky, I don't know, I've got an idea for this other business. I've been buying some properties, this turnkey concept in Indianapolis, and I just want to run some marketing ideas by you." And I'm like, "Of course. I mean, you and I have done plenty of business. You're like,
yep.
No charge, free call. Let's just get on the phone and brainstorm. Maybe I can provide some value and learn some things in the process." And Jay, I don't know what happened on that day. If it was like maybe I just had too much coffee, but we were just in the zone. But that 1 hour call turned into 3.5 hours, and it was just incredible. Some of the stuff that came out of there. It was just the energy between us and this playing off of each other. And I got done. I was like sweaty, and I just as a courtesy, I wrote down the 12, 13 different, main ideas that had come out of it. And as a courtesy, just emailed it to him in a bunch of bullet points. And literally 24 hours later, I got an email back from him saying, okay, let's do it. And of course, I picked up the phone and I'm like, dude, WTF? Like, what do you mean, let's do it? He's like, let's go into business together, right? And I'm like, well, you want to go into business here? He goes, yeah, I've been consulting with you for 2 or 3 years now. He was very complimentary. You've got this incredible work ethic. You've got a, great marketing brain. I've got this other business. I can't jump into this full time, but there's a real opportunity here. So that's interesting. So anyway, that was the seed of how we got started. So I flew up to Indianapolis and we met with the guy that he was actually buying from back then, who was, at the time was called a turnkey provider. I personally call him a slumlorder, but that's a whole different story. But that's kind of how we got started. We were essentially just a marketing arm for somebody else. But that's where the problem started. And we very quickly realized that our name and our reputation and what we were providing to our investors, to our customers who were buying from Jack and myself directly, was reliant on somebody else's BS or lack of good processes.
Yep.
And that was not a good situation.
No.
And so there's been this whole long evolution to our company of really, really difficult decisions. One was obviously to get away from them and start doing our own acquisitions on our own rehab. That's a huge decision. Okay, now all of a sudden we're in the rehab business and we're in the acquisition business, and we're competing with every damn wholesaler on every corner. So then from there, it's like, well, what the heck do we do about property management? Because those guys sucked and we don't have our own property management company. So we started referring out to somebody else that we thought was really good. And he is really good, but he wasn't us. So it wasn't, the customers were they were being served, but not in a way that we wanted them to be served. And what I mean by that is, look, if you, for people out there, I know you've got a lot of, real estate investors that listen to your show. If you buy a property out of state and you just farm it out to any property management company, honestly, I don't care if they're the best property management company on the planet. If they didn't sell you that property, the only way that they can make profit is on property management, which means that in addition to the approximately 10% of the rent that you're going to pay, every single tenant turn, every single plug toilet, every single time a tenant complains becomes a gargantuan money-making opportunity for them. And it's actually, frankly, the only place they make profit. Mm-hmm. And we started seeing that and going like, man, our investors are just getting hosed. Like they're unfortunately paying too much for tenant turns. They're paying too much for, incidental day-to-day repairs. And it's like, we're going to have to bring this in-house too.
Yep.
So we went down that road too.
Yep.
And it's been painful. It's been bloody. And then we started seeing even some situations where we would sell a property and, it was done and it was rehabbed and everything like that, but still wasn't tenanted. And for whatever reason, we had 2-3 months of not getting it tenanted before the investors started cash flowing. So even just as little as a few months ago, we made a decision like, hey, you know what? We are not selling any properties anymore unless they're done, rehabbed, inspected by a third party, because we give a warranty on our property, so we want to make sure that we did a good job on the rehab. So we do bring in a third party, but we want the investor to see that too. And we place a tenant in it. And it's not until it's all done and finished and we've gone back and signed off on any issues that may have arisen that we missed on the inspection, and we put our warranty in place and it's tenanted and cash flowing, then and only then do we sell a property. But in order to get to that point, it's difficult. This is a very difficult business.
So that we're clear,
yeah.
Which is why I exited it. And which is why I'm like, Why on earth are you doing it?
You're smarter than me. That's what this is all about.
No. I'm just like, I want everybody to understand that what you guys do is of immense value, and there's a lot to it before they go, you know what, I can do that myself. Yeah, well, no, think about that a little bit. Now, did you guys go so far as to also arrange financing as well?
No, that's an interesting point. Because one of the things we loved about Indianapolis, which is where we're currently operating exclusively, is there's some incredibly low pricing here. Prices are dirt cheap, and there's some just incredible great price to rent ratios. So we sell properties as finished, rehab, rented as inexpensively as $45,000 for a little single in a C-class area. And we maybe go as high as, 75 or 80 for a nice double.
I'm assuming they rent for around 600.
Yeah, 6, 7, mean, almost everything we do after all expenses will still return a double-digit cash-on-cash return. So that's why we're here, and that's why we've got things dialed in. Because we're in these lower-priced properties, they actually don't lend themselves very well to traditional financing, number one. We started with that, but then we would see that we would be writing up purchase agreements, and then those things would just sit. And, by the time that the investor got an approval or got, the lenders just don't want to mess with it. It's not enough money. They don't. So we just said we're going all cash. And we do have some really great relationships with some lenders that will come back in and allow the investor to do a nice cash out refi. And we find that the process becomes very, very smooth because we do everything that we do. We bring it ready. We get it profitable. We get it cash flowing. They plunk their cash down. They're cash flowing from day one. So their seasoning period starts immediately. And it's very, very easy with cash flowing properties with the right relationships, obviously, to come back in and get a nice cash out refi, pull some cash out, take a little bit more, buy another property. And that's how I would say probably 65 or 70% of our investors operate.
Totally makes sense. Now, have you guys, and now I'm asking for myself, have you guys ever used any sort of blanket loans?
No, I mean, at least behind the scenes in our own company, we've used our own cash for our inventory, and we've also got a line of credit for our company that we use when we need to buy more inventory. But it's a good relationship, and it's fairly flexible, and we can do interest only when we need to, that sort of thing. From a standpoint of our own personal portfolios, we're just like all of our customers. We'll pay cash for it and come back around and do a cash out refi if we want to, or we'll just hold it for cash because it's got nice cash flow. But we essentially are just like our customers on a personal level.
Totally understood. So what's the end game for you guys? What do you guys hope to do, say, in the future? What's the next step for high return?
Well, there's a lot. I have a lot of great ideas. Whether we're going to pull them off or not is, again, I'm an entrepreneur. So, I mean, for right now and the immediate, like let's say the next 2-3 years, for us is just scaling up, because now we're to that point where what I've previously described, we've got all the parts and pieces in place. We've got, the right players. We've got the right project management software. I mean, like all the stuff that we've had to put in behind the scenes has been like, I mean, just incredible. But the backbone now is built and it's working. And so for us, it's just scaling up. We may we're looking at possibly 1 or 2 other markets, but I'm not that keen on it until we get to, double or triple what we're doing in Indianapolis currently, because all of our crews and teams and everybody that we work with is here. Right. I do envision a day, technology is changing things, and I get very curious about stuff like 3D printing houses. I know it's crazy, but I just feel like, there's some opportunities that I think that are coming up, and I don't know if we'll get into it or not, but why couldn't we buy some nice, cheap inner city vacant lots and put a 3D printed house on there for, about the same price as what it costs to buy, one of our 40 or 50-year-old properties right now. I mean, obviously the CapEx would be lower and you'd be starting with something brand new. But yeah, so I think technology is going to change things. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I don't have a crystal ball. I feel like even with what we know about self-driving cars and all this other stuff, I mean, the face of commuting is about to change. I still feel, and this is just my gut talking, that there is always going to be an attraction to the inner city. Because that's where all the cool stuff is. That's where all the, the fun, funky restaurants are and bars. That's where the fun is. So, for urban dwellers, even if they are telecommuting or even if they live in the suburbs and, don't have to commute anymore, it may change, inner city values to a certain extent. But I always feel like there's going to be value to being near a major metropolitan downtown.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that at all. And on your point about commuting, I think it also goes to with saying that there's probably building up and clustering tighter is likely to be the case as well. So totally hear you 100%. Now, for those that have listened this far and probably want to find out more about what you guys got going on, what's going to be the best way for them to catch up with you?
Just go to our website. Anybody can spell this. It's really easy. highreturnrealestate.com. And on that site, we've got properties and, plenty of ways to get in touch with us. And, I will tell people that there's plenty of stuff, as busy as we are, that doesn't make it to the website. So, if you're really serious, fill out an inquiry form so we can find out who you are and, stay in touch with you and serve you up the kinds of properties that you're looking for.
Absolutely. Now, as we wind down here, I've got a question for you because I'm curious to hear your answer. Let's pretend for a second that one of the individuals listening, they're standing at what I like to call the precipice of decision. They've listened to you. They're getting excited. They're like, I'm going to do this entrepreneur thing. In fact, Shecky, they could even be standing in front of the superhero outfit store. They are picking out their cape and tight as we speak. But as you know, like I do, when we get to these moments of decision, often we have a companion, and that companion comes in the form of a voice, and that voice often reminds us of things. And it says things like, are you serious? Real estate? Really? Indianapolis? Are you sure? I mean, come on. Really? Real estate that doesn't work. I mean, do you remember the last time you tried something new and what happened? And that voice continues to remind us. And for some people, they're even related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that this time it's going to be different. They're going to move through and actually follow through on whatever you say. In fact, they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
Well, I think, look, a normal amount of skepticism is very good. I as a fairly spiritual person, what you have to do first off is learn to separate the intellectual conversation that's going in your head versus the feeling, the soul conversation. And not everybody can necessarily do that. Sometimes that's just sitting quietly, meditating, whatever you want to call it. But I would encourage people to just go out and look around. Look, there's some good turnkey companies out there. I mean, if you're looking for buy and hold, certainly we're an excellent choice. But I think what you have to do is do your due diligence before you invest in anything. Do your due diligence before you jump off that cliff. You have to not only be convinced, intellectually that it's a good move, like it makes sense and the numbers work and all that, but you also have to feel good about it. That said, you can't listen too much to that intellectual voice that goes, hey, you screwed up before, you did that, whatever, because that's the thing that's going to lock you down in fear, and that's going to create indecision, and indecision is going to create non-movement. And let's face it, you're not going to accomplish anything standing still. I'll volunteer this. So I think I mentioned to you, Jay, that I'm a customer of our own business. But at the outset, I was a customer of that initial, slumlording dude, let's just say that. And dude, I lost my ass. I mean, but I took the leap, and there was a lot of things that I learned. And as a result of that knowledge that I gained by losing my ass, I now know how to make 10 times as much money by not doing what I did before.
Yep. Yeah.
So, again, there's no real easy answer to your question. It's, it's the dilemma that everybody faces at one time or another. I mean, people face that same question when they're right about to walk down the aisle and get married. Should I really be committing my life to this person? Maybe they're amazing, maybe they're not, but there's always going to be doubt. There is an old saying, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yep. Agreed.
And when you do that, that's like a muscle too. So the more that you tend to do things that you're afraid of, the easier it becomes. So, I mean, this is not obviously my first time as a guest on a podcast, and look, this is great. I love chatting with you, and things go really easily. But man, the first few times I did that, who the hell is this dude? Why would they want to have him on this show? This guy, it's messed up, right? So,
right.
Now I'm not afraid anymore.
Yeah. We're all just people at the end of the day, which is great. And I definitely appreciate your perspective, your just do it attitude, and to go out there and try stuff. And let me be the first to say thanks for taking the time to share your knowledge, your wisdom, as well as your insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
My pleasure. It's been great.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means highreturnrealestate.com. Why? Because you have thought about it long enough. Take the next step. Fill out the inquiry. Why? Because it puts you into action. Nothing is going to change. You looked at your taxes bill last year and you were upset about it and you want it to change. Well, cool. highreturnrealestate.com. Fill it out. And I think that there's lots of benefits to you that will accrue from moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we only have now. That's the only time we get. And right now, it's time for you to make something happen. It's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.